ready? I'm ready. Here we go.
Everything's ready for launch.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Oh, hello, everyone. Can you see me okay?
Yes, everything is in perfect upload status. So hopefully we won't have any glitches, although it is a Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrogrades are notorious as far as glitching things up in one's life.
I pressed the button. So Mercury's retrograde. I know. So it's like the worst day ever. That's what I hear sometimes from people. They're like, oh.
Yeah, a lot of people definitely get all worked up about it. Again, it's, it's all a process of the mind. And if you're mindful of your mind, then Mercury is only going to have the effect of causing you to have to stop and address some things that needed to be cleared up anyway. So there really isn't any anomalies in the universe that are out of whack.
So it doesn't matter that Mercury's in retrograde. Every day sucks anyway. So
yeah, that's there are those people.
Yeah, definitely. If you're willing to see and have the eyes to see, I'm getting some sort of sound breaking up. Yeah, willing to see the things to heal, right? How would you describe that, as you just did?
Well, yeah, it's Mercury is the planet that we imagine to be in control of communication and in control of money and in control of technology. And so when Mercury appears to be going backwards in the sky, which is what a retrograde is, it's actually simply an optical illusion. But that optical illusion causes us to have breakdowns in the weakest points in those areas of our lives. So it's actually, in many ways, a good thing, because it's just pointing out areas of vulnerability. And of course, being into A Course in Miracles, we're constantly working on that idea of becoming invulnerable. So the reality is that it just is forcing us to pay attention.
I'd say that I like the optical illusion idea. That's good. As much as even myself stuttering on my words is also an optical and how do you say ear illusion? Is the fact that someone has trouble communicating it's the whole package, is an illusion. It goes one. It might go hand in hand together, but it actually the entire thing of it, is all just as joke as oh great. So communication, huh? Damn Mercury. I just can't even say it.
Often in a person's natal chart, if they have communication issues, it'll show up as them being born during a Mercury retrograde cycle. And so something that is a long-standing element in their lives that they need to address, or that they decided to address in this particular lifetime. And so the whole point of it all is to, clean the mess up and move beyond that belief in a limitation of the Son of God.
Yeah, I have this thing that keeps, it's like this monkey on my back, this thing that's constantly, I don't know, it's like a cancer grew on me and I just can't get rid of it. Ever since I was born, this whole body entirely. I can't seem to shake it off for more than an instant.
Yeah, well, that's really what the holy instant is all about, is to make that breakthrough where if we bring the mind to a point of cessation, then the thinker no longer exists, if even for a millisecond. And that is the breakthrough point, when you stop being you and allow yourself to return to your identity as Christ or as God in expression, then marvelous things happen. So, it only takes one or two brief connections like that to completely transform an individual's life. So that's what we're working toward, is to getting into that place where we're at peace with letting go of this mortal identity, because one way or another you're going to let go of it anyway at some point. So why not do it and experience the rewards of stepping apart from yourself and starting to experience your true self as that which is the totality of life throughout the cosmos, throughout all eternity. And that really is, it's an interesting tightrope to be walking in this mortal realm, because we have so much fear of that loss of a self that is damaged and broken and given to all these different forms of what's the word for it, being out of truth, being out of reality. When you say, oh, I'm sick, or I'm poor, or I'm this, or I'm that, you're standing in defiance of God. You're saying, well, God, you have created me and I am flawed. And of course, that simply isn't true. We created me and added all those flaws to try and reinforce the belief that our creation is real.
Yeah, we wanted to make a little self so that we can refrain from others, keep the good stuff, the gifts away from it, so we can actually be right about, yeah, God, see, look at my little me over here. My little me is doing without all this stuff. And I like that how you described that, of coming back to the Christ mind and stuff. The fourth dimension of time is actually referred to as spirit prison, and it's often in this position where we still think we're alive and we haven't yet accepted Christ for ourselves. And it is that split mind between the fourth dimension little ego self that is based off of memory. And on the other side there, not opposite, but the other side of the first dimension, which it all has derived from, that Christ consciousness. And just the fact that forgiveness being such a beautiful part in it, it makes perfect sense as far as with my mind, being as, I guess, mechanical as it is, basing all of these ideas off of the past, and your body and your life is off the past. And this really is the reason forgiveness is the key to remembering and recalling this first dimension of Christ. Because, I mean, it's not the one obsessed, with the past. And yeah, it's scary. It's absolutely scary to be letting go of it all and willing to go to your demise, because honestly, like, Devon is not going to exist. It's either going to be the body's death, or it's going to be this ego death, of this ultimately this Christ surrendering the belief in Devon. But Devon is fully justified in being absolutely terrified of it, because it is his demise as well as yours. So, but it's a beautiful demise.
Yes, well, and there are some, Joel Goldsmith is one of my favorite writers on spirituality, and
He is
he
a popular one.
called The Thunderous Silence, which is a great book on meditation, but more importantly on experiencing that breakthrough point of contact. And Joel had gotten so comfortable with entering into that realm that he, was engaged in that sort of a union throughout the day. It wasn't just once a month or once a year. And Joe would stop, periodically across his activities throughout the day and dip into the well, as it were. And Mary Baker Eddy did the same thing. Ernest Holmes had that kind of a level of comfort with it, and that's what we're all aspiring to, is to be able to come back with the expectation of having a joyous experience rather than a fearful experience. And even though the ego is flipping out initially in that journey, even the ego arrives at a point where it becomes tamed and willingly recognizes the need to go into spirit just to resolve whatever is going on in the moment throughout the course of the day.
It's true. It does start to see the benefits of coming into that place of peace, and then we start developing this spiritual ego thing. People think that's like this definition of, this holy guilt or something, and it's not. And it's definitely perfectly fine. Like there's really nothing wrong with the ego in its essence. It's just simply the ability to remember. That's really all it is. And using pretty much the day before or the memories of the past all within your day, something to do by something you remember. And there's really nothing wrong with it. It's only when this idea that you have about what you remember is somehow negative or not in correspondence to your true desire to be happy and God's desire for you to be happy. So really something I love to say often is that a happy dreamer only has happy memories. And it kind of stretches people's boundaries because they think, since the past's gone and done with, they can't do anything about it. So they're like, well, I have these torturous, suffering, painful memories, so I'm screwed with the happy dream thing. But the interesting thing about the past being gone and not here and now is that you can make it out to be anything you want it to be. And as much as I might insist that it is, say, torturous, is because in this moment, I am making a decision to be sorrowful or angry or somehow frustrated or upset, and I use the past to justify or as an excuse to feel that way. When this happy dreamer no longer decides to use it that fashion and actually shifts the past and everything it knows about the past to influence the moment. And the easiest way is to just freaking forget about the past. That's the easy way.
Well, and that's a big part of the journey, is to recognize that all of this is in fact a dream. And so being wounded, being upset about the past is actually pretty pointless when you get into deeper realms of truth and reality, because we were designed to be, eternally perfect and to have no needs or wants, and to live in a space of absolute perpetual peace. But because we did create the illusion of time and the illusion of a separate life, those things get lodged in the back of the mind, and it creates a lot of confusion for the mind. It creates a lot of confusion for the individual. And so every morning when I wake up, here lately I've been, well, actually it's probably been the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, I generally wake up and have had a dream that was somewhat visceral. I dream pretty lucidly, or pretty much in high def. And so then when I wake up, it's like, oh, that was a dream. And that is a catalyst. That's the right first step for my day, when I can look at that and realize I was dreaming, and then transfer that understanding into the activities that are, coming up on the horizon. So if you look at your life as a dream, you can participate, you can have fun, but that's also an escape route. That's a back door to get away from having to carry all of the anger, frustration, resentment, sorrow, all of those issues. They don't need to be part of the journey that you're on. They can just simply be incidents that seem to have occurred, but in truth really have no power in the truth of where you are living now, which is in the eternal. You are in eternity right now.
Yeah, I enjoy the dream metaphor a lot. And yeah, just like literally being a dream. And it gets to the point where, just like in a dream, sleeping dream, that to influence something, to make a difference in the world, often you might, like, I don't know if you've had the problem in a dream, you try and do something and it still comes out a way as if you didn't do it. And then you try and do it a different way, it still comes out wrong as far as what you're deciding. And then you try to do it a different way, bring some big something or other, and it just can't seem to change. And then you realize, oh, I need to do it with my mind. And then you do it with your mind, almost as if you're not even touching it, and you make that influence, you make that change. Now, it might not be the same manifestation and gestation period in the physical world, but ultimately it does give you that training, that if you might be struggling on something, making it happen physically, or you might be influencing it to repeatedly happen or something, and can you make the change excuse me excuse me to you have that change, instead of from influencing physical form that might bring it about, but ultimately what it's bringing about is that change in mind. So so taking this pill or that pill, and I bring about that change, and if I think it's the pill, I'm misunderstanding, just like in the dream. uh, what I'm doing is believing in that pill. It's a placebo or nocebo effect, and you actually bring it about by believing it's going to happen. You're making that choice, and it's actually occurring within your consciousness. And if you look around as everything in your dream, just like in a sleeping dream, you're not actually talking to other people. You're not actually working with other beings. You're actually only working with everything symbolizing your mind and what thoughts are in your mind. So it's pretty fascinating, especially like right now, I'm just talking to the one feather of me, which, I heard there was a movie that a person was named One Feather in recently. It's a change of subject then.
And that is exactly the way it works. And, it's, again, we can draw on experience. Every time you have a dream, that entire dream is being created by the mind. So all of the different people that are populating that dream are different aspects that are residents in the mind. And that is a very strong and significant key to how to live in this present world, is to realize that everybody you're encountering is yourself disguised as an individual, as disguised as a separate being. And once you can finally get down to the foundation and comprehend that, then it makes it a lot easier to withdraw from the instinct to be in a defensive posture or an attack posture, or feeling like, this person's out of control, and that person hates me and that other person loves me. It's all an orchestration. It's all a vignette that has been put together by you. And once you start to realize that, it does give you a sense of relief and freedom that you're not going to find through any other avenue.
People ask me what makes a shaman, and this is kind of the conclusion I come to, aside from being able to induce and assist people to going to other realms and other dimensions of experience. But this, as far as someone that I'd say, and usually it gets misunderstood pretty naturally, easily when I say something along the lines of following your dreams. It might not be conveyed properly, because at the same time, it's, entirely life is a dream, and the ones who want to see the signs and the symbols in it, as if something, and the dreamer or something, say God beyond the dream, is attempting to communicate with you, and through that dream of experience, and you're willing to see the symbolism of things, say animals and beings and people that repeat it, they come in your life, and situations, and even planets, celestial bodies, and you're looking at the symbolism and interpreting it in a fashion that you feel like is actually bringing about such an alternate dimensional experience, say the spiritual universe, or that of God recognition, or even just peace and happiness. And to say, there's definitely different degrees of shamanic practices, but as far as my concern, it's been something my entire life, really enthralled and intrigued by dreams, sleeping dreams, and wanting to find out what they mean, what is going on with it. Something about it is speaking to me, and the willingness to see, even as then applying that to my physical reality, my waking dream, that the willingness and desire to see something there that is between God and me. Ooh, get poetic.
Yes, and to get out of it, that instinct to project, because that's what makes this dream so immediate for us, is we have projected everything into an exterior state, and all of a sudden we are surrounded by all these different experiences and different individuals, and it's the perfect delusion is what it is. I mean, we designed this so perfectly that we allow ourselves to become obsessed with it, and that's really what perpetuates the dream. That's what keeps it growing, going, and growing, because it is in fact uh, a journey through space and time, and physicality, and all of these other enticing experiences. I had a friend who was Hindu, and the Hindu philosophy uh, is that the dream is like a lotus. A lotus comes to the surface of the pond, and it opens. And according to him, it was supposed to be um, 16 billion years in the process of opening up and then closing, and then becoming submerged again, and then another lily would come to the surface, and there would be another cycle. So there are some people in some religious or spiritual practices who believe that this is not the only time this has occurred. It has occurred over and over again, and is a part of the deeper nature of the supreme God that we are all participating in.
Well, I mean, I would definitely concur with that in an idea. To say it's actually happening is, of course, a misunderstanding. But as far as different dream states, different planets with different universes, different laws, different understandings, different separation ideas, most definitely happened. I mean, we have eternity. I mean, do we really want to sit there and stare at light for eternity? And the whole idea of just thinking that we're seeing some twinkling aspect in that light begats a dream, and it can't be twinkling, but just be staring at it, and for billions of years, to say the lack of better words, and then you start noticing things, you start seeing things, you start thinking that yeah, is that piece of light flittering over there? Is there a ray of light coming off of that? And oh man, all of a sudden you're in a dream of thinking what that could be and how it could be. What's the
Yeah,
possibilities?
yeah, it is a very complex creation that we create and perhaps recreate over and over and over again. But again, that brings us up to the whole nature of paradox, and how, if this happens repeatedly from our perspective in the dream world, does it actually happen within the greater collective of God itself? So once again, we're back to the rabbit going down the hole, and being very seductive, giving us that little nudge, come chase me. Where can we go this time?
Yeah, it's just like a little game we play, a little retreat. And the only problem is that we think there's a problem with it, that we think there's guilt involved or suffering, and really the higher aspect of ourselves is completely enjoying every second of it, even if this little self is suffering so much it kills itself off, and people look at it and say, oh man, this he had to be suffering so much that he decided to hurt himself in such a fashion. And the higher self, without the resistance perspective of a body and the separation, completely enjoyed the ride. I mean, it's just an extreme roller coaster. I mean, what is the fun of a roller coaster without the confronting of this idea, this fear of death? And the thing is you need the fear of death in order to enjoy the roller coaster. And that's just, currently what the idea of separation consists of. And when there's such an infinite array of options of so many different types of universes, so many different types of ways. And it really is that, as far as recognizing the dreamer and going back to that idea, is more of a conclusion of joining universes, let's say, joining dreams together, and choosing what you want your dream to be, instead of being so much a victim of the world you see. Now it's happening by you and from you instead.
Yes, it is a magical theater that we have uh, fashioned here for our own amusement. And the only thing is, when you get too enwrapped in it, you all of a sudden start to believe that it's real, that the duality is actually a real thing. And that really is the trick of, again, rejoining your true self, is to realize that it's nothing that is either good or bad, but it's your thinking that makes it appear to seem so. And Shakespeare was one who came up with that quote that I just kind of lifted out of thin air there. But that is how it works. It is a process of attachment. And if you can practice non-attachment, then you kind of segue into a whole different experience, and you begin to realize these are simply parts of a chessboard, and the game is afoot. So how are you going to end up at the end of the day? Are you going to end up losing all of your pieces, or are you going to end up vanquishing the person on the other side of the board who is yourself also? So it just goes round and round and round. And, you know, our existence is definitely a roulette wheel. I mean, in a lot of ways, we have no idea as to what the outcome is going to be. And a lot of times, like you had said earlier, we turn it over, we surrender it to the higher self, and the outcome may be something entirely different than what you desire or expect. But when you actually stop and look at it and embrace it, there's a huge sigh of relief, because when you allow the higher self to orchestrate things, the outcome is always for everybody's best interest. So that's the beauty of what we're learning about in the Course in Miracles, is that we can alter outcomes by releasing our desired or pre-programmed outcome to situations in our life. But we have to be willing to take that leap of faith. We have to have that kind of trust where we're allowing it to be reformatted for our best interests. And sometimes our best interests may seem to be very painful, very unpleasant, but it's a stimulant. It's like if you take a electrical stimulant to a muscle and you stimulate it, the muscle actually becomes enhanced by that over a period of time. So the same phenomena are occurring all around us, and that's another exciting aspect of the dream, is to be able to observe the parallels that are going on in the world that we inhabit, so that everything that we think we see actually parallels with something much deeper or much different than what the appearance is on the surface.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, as far as thinking of the many, outcomes, like you have, it could be ending differently than we think, from this eternal perspective. Why not try them all? Let's do them all. Yeah, it seems as if we have one, universe, one outline, one timeline of this Devon, say, but from this eternal perspective of developing a whole Devon in the first place, let's choose among all the variations of all of them. We got every single angle, every single possibility. Am I really simply just focused on one of them? I mean, I might be currently, but once I recognize that it's up to me, and then I actually have all these possibilities and ideas. But of course, as you're saying, it has nothing to do with the dream. That if you still think it's about the dream, if you still think it's about Devin, and still think it's about the person, then of course you're going to be focused on the person and have no ability to see other options. No ability to see the option of changing it or being responsible and bringing about even the understanding or the sensation of the recognition that this is all coming from me and not a victim of it. Once I'm focused on my person, then I am, a victim. I am a victim of, say, even God. Oh, I have to just accept what I've been given is a line of a victim, or not. Victim has a connotation of guilt, but to say the created perspective over the creator perspective.
Yeah, and that again is part of that paradox. When you get right down to the sub foundation of all of the philosophies that are based on reality and truth, there is only God. Yes, that's why even in the Course, or especially in the Course, there is that acknowledgement that in describing God, you simply say God is, and that's all that need be said. So the Creator
And too
and
much.
creation are so seamlessly unified as one that there is no distinction between the two. So we look at the creator as the first cause, and that creates, in linear reality, that creates the idea of a paradox. But in truth, because of the totality of the thoughts of God, uh, everything is perfect, and everything is one to the extent that there is no awareness of separation.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. As far as on my journey, my desire to get out of the dream, I was dedicated. I went on this, what turned out to be 5 years of just looking for anything and everything to get out of the dream and to escape, really. And I knew it was possible. And it turned into just simply following guidance and forgiving everything that came up. And everyone I ran into had something for me to forgive and to allow. And so, and to actually have to be in a confident place to say the experience I had in what seemed to be a moment in time, I would concur with the idea of escaping the dream is exactly what I did. And then to recall that consciousness that creates the entirety of all reality and all seeming realities, just to have that recollection of that essence is it. I mean, like, we asked the question to ourselves as far as course students, why are we still here? Why are we doing this? And to think of how powerful this Son of God is, and it's still happening. It's almost as if we truly honestly asked that question and wanted an answer, we would recognize that there is a purpose to it for the Son of God that we are not willing to see. And as far as the created person, is impossible to see. For part of that purpose and that function of this seeming reality is the escape and the experience of not knowing why it's in the experience of what it's doing, and being this separate aspect of experiencing the world's created instead of knowing everything and just creating it and having God mode all the time on there. And it loses what one would say, well, it never had this essence of fun unless it had something that was excited to experience itself. And as we're coming into this some say seventh seal of existence, we are going through this as a collective, this spiritual awakening, because it is a driven excitement. Like, we feel that excitement of making it happen and recalling ourselves and the awakening of ourselves. But we could not do that if we remembered. If we already had it and had the recognition that we started the whole thing with, then we would have never, took the first step. We would have, never really even ate a sandwich or took of our mother's breast or anything. That we are dedicated to this to experience something where we know, this eternal self knows, and it has eternity and infinity to play with. It's just simply doing something. And so, as far as my experience, and when I did what escaping the dream, what as let's say whatever, where I can't even recall the entirety of the experience, it is that recognition of the purpose of coming back here in the first place, being born in the first place. And we like to think, oh, I'm never going to come back. Well, why are you waking up in the morning? That is coming back. Every day we come back.
Yeah, that's the irony of the whole thing, and it is fun to watch people who run around constantly whining about how, this is so horrible. I am so superior. I'm never coming back here again after this incarnation. I don't want to deal with these lowly, vile individuals that I have to accommodate on an hourly basis in my existence. And it's interesting how the ego really does have this glorious sense of identity that is, well, currently being mirrored to some degree by the President of the United States, Mr. Trump. He definitely imagines himself to be one of the most perfect beings in the history of all space and time. And that's a good mirror for the rest of us, to keep us away from that level of vanity, to imagine that we are superior to the dream, and that we do have that ability to just haul off and pull the plug on it and go stomping back up to heaven and say, okay, God, I made a mistake there. I'm going to reside here with you now. That is an absurdity when you really look at it. And like you said, when people wake up every morning, they're returning to re-enter the activities of the day, the part of the dream that had seduced them. And so watching all the vanity in the world can really be kind of fun, because again, you can laugh at it and realize that's another part of me that is just getting out of control here.
I definitely say that I have a part of that in me. That there is somehow that existence. It's just, and you see the symbolism. I mean, it's hilarious that his name's Trump. It's like from day one, that's what he's been seeking, I think.
Yes.
The Trump world.
And Trump card.
Yeah. There is definitely a part of me that thinks I have the right to trump, play the Trump card, or conquer the world. It's there. And the key thing is if you truly recognize the godly essence in yourself, you don't need to achieve such a thing. You already have it.
Yeah, it's actually playing out just the way you planned it, even though you don't want to look at the fact that you planned it. So that's where the Hall of Mirrors comes into play. There was a very famous fan dancer, exotic dancer called Sally Rand, and she was kind of the toast of Hollywood in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And I had the privilege of being able to see her perform in 1969. And they brought the lights down low, and she came out, and she had these fans made of feathers. And she did this dance that was quite exotic and quite compelling, but you would have sworn she was as naked as the day she arrived on this planet. And at the end of her performance, she drops the fans, they turn up the lights, and she's wearing these leotards. And so it was the perfect illusion. And that really is what we are. We're all Sally Rand. We've got our fans, and we're dancing for ourselves. And we're imagining that we're seeing something lascivious. We're seeing, the naked truth there. And then when it's all over, it's like, well, no, actually, you never were naked, and you never lost your innocence. How about that?
Oh no, I just looked up her. She is who I thought she was, but in some of these photos, that's definitely a nipple there.
She was quite an amazing performer, and she was performing up on Sunset Strip the night that I went up and saw her, and I was quite fascinated by the illusion that she cast. And I had just gotten back from Vietnam, so illusions were something that I found very compelling, because when I was in Vietnam, I actually began to awaken to the illusion of nationalism and recognize that these people are no different than my people that I left back home, you know. And it became very easy for me to be enchanted and to fall in love with the Vietnamese culture. And so then coming back to America and diving into American culture was kind of a big next step adventure for me. So I spent some time out on the West Coast in Los Angeles and went zipping around on the beaches and up in Hollywood and thoroughly enjoyed that place because it was kind of an epicenter of illusion. You know, Hollywood is where the movie industry is based, and they devote their existence to pumping out even more illusions for us to engage in.
Yeah, illusions are entertaining. And it just gives us a new perspective, a new reason for living, being, or isness. It's just another way of seeing. And that's what a perspective is, and that's, you know, essentially what a miracle is this change of perspective or a recognition, you know, that what I once thought was real was actually a misunderstanding, and that I fit into a different perspective of recognizing these other laws that are even here now, and I'm not victim of them. But it's fun, you know, every time you get into a real good movie and you're really into it, you know, because of what they've introduced to you, is these specific laws and what might be the backstory and everything, and you naturally apply it throughout the movie, remembering it and knowing that that's what is there. And so it fits in nicely, you know, as far as the ability to remember that we have. This recollection of the past is what maintains and holds the dream. I mean, it is quite literally consists of our anchors on into what is Devon and what is One Feather.
Yes, and what is Trump, and
Yeah.
what is what
Yeah,
is
what is
Mercury,
Trump?
and all those other performers that we applaud or want to burn at the stake alternately. So, and
Burn at the stake. That sounds fun too.
yes, well, I every once in a while burn a steak just to remind myself that it's better to be eating steak than to be being burnt at the stake. I think I may have some shadowy memories of that from previous lifetimes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, speaking of, and it's interesting how you come into some experiences, or things that trigger those memories of additional or past lifetimes, where you're like, oh, you know, that seems so familiar, and yet I can't put my finger on it happening in my life at any time. So it must, like, how do I know it? How do I feel it? And it's really interesting when you get into those, some would say a karmic memory, and where we still use it to influence and develop our person as we are today.
And
I
that
know
is true.
my
So, well, we kind of went off on a voyage there that was kind of fun. And how are the two little ones? They've been very quiet this morning. They seem to be enchanted by our dialogue.
Yeah, well, the littlest one at this time is in with the mother and is suckling the breast. And as far as the toddler, he has been enjoying grandma's presence upstairs in the morning pretty routinely lately. So it's a good time for that.
That's perfect. It sounds like we've got things really lined up for future broadcasts here, unless somebody goes on vacation or some other fly in the ointment appears. But that's kind of fun too, is having continuity in our existence, and that's what the little ones appreciate the most.
Yeah, well, and once we find a routine, it's almost inevitable that constant change thing follows us everywhere. It's stirring it up, mixing it up, making sure we don't get too attached. It's kind of a gift. It's nice, but it's definitely, you have to stay on your toes about it and seeing, what happens. Are you prepared?
And it is the only constant in the universe is change. So that's the one thing you can pretty much place your money on and walk away a winner. And but this has been a very insightful dialogue. The reason I do all these videos and do all my memes and posts on Facebook, et cetera, is not to educate others or to get the attention of others. I have discovered that all of this activity I'm doing is actually kind of selfish, because it is forcing me to evolve and grow. So when I have a dialogue with you or with Barrett or with anybody that I encounter, it's also one of those wonderful things where it's an emissary from my higher self, bringing me all these riches on these satin pillows. Yeah. So I feel like, every time I do anything in the course community or outside of the course community, in the spiritual community, it really is a way of learning that motivates me, because when I dialogue, when I engage, I learn. And so I do want to thank you for our discussions that we've had up to date, and looking forward to those coming in the future, because we're propelling each other to a much higher place.
I would agree completely that I benefit so much from the engagement and the willingness to
I just lost the sound. Did you hit a button, or did the button hit you? Because I'm not getting anything from your side of the sound spectrum here. If people are watching this, they're probably enjoying it. If people are just on audio only, it could be frustrating, because you can't see all the antics that Devin is going through trying to resolve the sound system.
Mercury! I hear you now.
Yeah, yes, that Mercury in retrograde is very compelling, and it is demanding that you stay on top of your game there.
Yeah, you got to mix things up, make it a little different every day. It's fun. Make it bored around here.
So here in Chicago, I am noticing the last couple of nights especially, cool nights, very cool early morning periods, and then fairly warm days, but autumn is definitely on the horizon. It is thundering down the road in our direction. Are you guys noticing that up in the mountains there in Utah?
Yes. I mean, we're closer to the sun, so we're still experiencing the heat, but it is definitely getting cooler nights, and yeah, slowing down. It's nice. I do like the transition periods of spring and fall. They're probably my favorite. But as far as having an opinion around here, like, why would you move to such a place? There's such extreme summers and such extreme winters. Land of Zion. Jeez.
Well, I mean, there's supposedly some golden tablets out there somewhere, and that's something that is very attractive to a lot of people. I mean, I would like to have a golden tablet that was inscribed by God Himself. So there, you've got an automatic draw there to you, between the seagulls, the honeybees, and the golden tablets. It I can't imagine why you don't have a lot of people clamoring to set up business there in the honeybee state.
They were actually, as far as the plates, this delay in my ear is annoying. The plates were actually reburied in New York. The church does own the Hill Cumorah, where they were, no, they weren't originally found, but they were reburied there, and they're claiming not to, unbury them and find them until a specific call happens and until they see some specific signs of the end of times and stuff. As far as when they're waiting for the Antichrist is really what's happening. And there's a whole part of the plates, as far as what as the Book of Mormon, is only not even 1/3 or 1/4 of the entirety of what can be opened and revealed through this. But as well as actually receiving that call, we get into another debate of who's really a prophet and who's not.
Yeah, that's a lively debate too. But I'm still of the opinion that they actually smuggled the plates into Utah, and there will be some sort of a divinely inspired event where they're able to come up with,
I wouldn't doubt
this prophecy that ultimately will cause us all to want to have many wives and plow the land.
Hey, well, if they're gonna make us, then let's just obey. Just kidding.
It is it's fun to harpoon religions, because all of them have got that broad belly that is very vulnerable. None of them are even minutely aware of that fact, and so it makes for good conversation around the fireside late at night when everybody's had a couple of brewskis and loosened up to the point where they can laugh at life, because religion and politics are our two greatest sources of humor in this somewhat darkened realm.
They are very easy to take seriously, that's for sure. I mean, once you start thinking, it's going to influence how my children and my children's world is, and it gets very serious. It's like, oh, they're all going to be slaves, and like, whoa, everybody needs to calm down here. Find the humor is definitely a sense of release. As far as even in movies, I mean, the best part, even in a serious movie, is the comedic relief. You get that clown coming in somewhere, and it's as far as relief is a good word as release, and you gotta remember to laugh. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is, and the underlying humor is that it's all us. We are the clowns. When they say bring in the clowns, well, we're standing in the wings with our red noses and our floppy shoes, and once we're able to recognize that about our ego self, then the journey becomes a lot easier for us. So what have you got planned for the rest of the day there in the extremes of Utah?
Ooh. Entertaining a toddler and bouncing a baby. That's all that I know is actually going to be happening. As far as other ideas, I plan on eating something and feeding them something, and then we might get ambitious and want to go to a splash pad or someplace swimming or something. That might be nice.
Yeah, maybe go down to a pumpkin patch and encourage the pumpkins to get ripe and big.
Is it that time?
That's another part of autumn, and I assume you guys probably have some orchards out there. Apples are starting to become available in our orchards around the country, so it's that time of year to exercise Thanksgiving.
I know we do, but apples sure do not grow the same way as they did like in Ohio and over there. I've noticed that they're not quite as big and juicy, but they have their own unique thing. think it's the bees.
High country apples and horse apples, and I think that's bringing us up to the top of the hour here.
There we go. We made it. Thank you guys for tuning in and being here, and thank you, One Feather, for this time again. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Devin. It was great, and I just want to extend our love to all the people out there who are participating in this mad game. So get out and share the love and pass the love around, and you'll feel a lot better about life.
Amen. I'll speak to you next week.
See you in a week.
Have a beautiful day.